everyone, and welcome to another day of Bookmas. Today I've decided to talk about the 10 books that I really should have read this year, and I'm kind of embarrassed that I haven't read them yet, but I'm hoping to prioritise them in 2021. I'd actually like to give two honourable mentions as well, and that's To Death Set Sail by Robin Stevens and The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by Victoria Schwab, because there is a chance I might manage to squeeze them before the end of the month. It's high up on my list of things to do, so I haven't included them in this video just in case I do read them before the end of the year, but there's a good chance that they'll be like the first books that we pick for our January TBR. So, depends on what the ducks say. Oh, the ducks are going to be cruel to me, I can already sense it. So, without further ado, we will carry on with this list of 10 books I should have read already. I'm not putting these in any particular order because I obviously don't know which ones I'm going to enjoy more or less until I read them. But these are all ones that I wish I had read. So I'm just going to jump in with A Song of Wraiths and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown. So this is a YA fantasy debut, the first one in a duology. I'll be honest, I don't know too much about it. I know that it's African-inspired fantasy, and that sounds great. And I know that it's been getting a lot of rave reviews, and that a lot of people are really anticipating the sequel. But I'm mostly interested because, like, how gorgeous the cover is. As soon as I saw that cover, I was like, oh, that's a book I want to read. So hopefully I will be able to get the first one read before the sequel is released. The next book I'd really like to read is another one that I'm basically interested in because it has a beautiful cover, and that's The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. So this one I know is being heralded as like a middle grade novel aimed at adults, so it's kind of got that like whimsical nature, like some very lyrical storytelling. And it seems like it's a very character-driven one. As far as I'm aware, the house in the Cerulean Sea is like an orphanage, and somebody has to go and like investigate the goings-on in this house. Forgive me if that's not correct, because as I said, I haven't read these, but that's what I can gather, and I'm excited about it. The next book I really wish I'd read this year is The Burning Kingdoms by Sally Green. This is the third book in the Demon World trilogy. The Smoke Thieves trilogy. It's the Demon World is the second one. I knew I was going to do that. I always get book series in the wrong order. So anyway, I've read The Smoke Thieves. I've read The Demon World. I will admit that I didn't particularly love either of them. So I'm not quite sure why The Burning Kingdoms is one that I really, really want to get to. But it's one of those series that it moves very slowly. There's a lot of exposition, there's a lot of learning the characters, there's a lot of learning the history of the land and the history of each of the individual characters and their backstories, and there's an awful lot of focus on the world building, which makes it very kind of stodgy and slow as a story, but it makes me wonder whether it's going to pay off so spectacularly in the third book that it is going to be catapulted into one of my favourite series of all time. My fingers are crossed, because I loved Sally Green's writing in Half Bad when I read that. I will admit that I still haven't finished that series. I need to do that as well. But I loved her writing so much, and I've read Half Bad 3 or 4 times, and I've adored it every single time. So I was really disappointed that I didn't love The Smoke Thieves as much. So The Burning Kingdoms will hopefully end up being a really great series ender, but I'm scared, which is why I'm putting off. The next book I really wish I'd read this year is Felix Ever After by Case and Calendar. As far as I'm aware, Felix Ever After is about a person who comes out as trans, and they have to deal with the way that impacts them while they're still at school. So going through like the transitioning and learning their like new gender identity while also still trying to fit into that kind of cliquey, drama-filled environment. It sounds amazing. Beautiful cover, lots of people recommending this one. I've never read any of Case and Calendar's writing, but I own a few of their books on my Kindle, and I really want to get to these sooner rather than later, because it feels like not only are they very powerful stories, but they're also very timely stories, and they're very relevant, and I think Case and Calendar is telling stories that not many people are telling, and they're doing it in the right way, which is always something I'm going to celebrate. Another book I wish I'd read this year is Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I don't know too much about this. I know that it is a Gothic book, and that it's very different to Gods of Jade and Shadow, which is Sylvia Moreno Garcia's other novel that I know about. I own that one, so I'll probably end up reading that one first, because I just haven't been able to get a hold of Mexican Gothic, but this is another one of those times when the cover is so gorgeous that even not knowing much about the story, I'm already compelled to pick it up. The next book I wish I'd read this year is another sequel, and that is Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. I wasn't planning on reading Midnight Sun. I wasn't planning on buying it. I was just going to wait and get it out of the library in a few years and just see what it was like then. And then I went into Waterstones the day after it came out and they had one copy left, and I was like, well, I can't resist, and I bought it. And I wish I hadn't, because I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it. I enjoyed Twilight when I read it the first time, but that was when I was like either 14 or 15. I enjoyed Twilight when I reread it, but I didn't like it as much as I did the first time, and I never managed to finish my reread because I was just not interested in picking up the rest of them after I reread the first one. But now I have to reread all four and then read this beast of a book, which is from Edward's perspective. And I mean, part of me, it's just like the nostalgia factor of like, I've always wanted to read Midnight Sun because it was always coming and then postponed, and then we didn't know if it was ever going to get here, and now it's here. It's in my hand. This should be exciting, not something that I'm apprehensive about. But I'm apprehensive about it, so I'm putting it off. And I will be honest, I don't know if I'm ever going to read it, but I probably should have, considering how much money I spent on it. Sean says it's got an ugly cover. I don't disagree, but yeah, and that's not the reason I'm putting it off, even though it probably should be, because it is not the nicest cover. The next book that I really wish I'd read this year is You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson, which is definitely a book which has a beautiful cover, and again, that's one of the reasons that I'm interested in reading it, because I am a simple being. You Should See Me in a Crown follows a girl who wants to be a doctor, but her scholarship funding falls through, so she no longer knows whether she's going to be able to go to med school. And the only way that she can think of to get any more kind of funding is by becoming prom queen, because whoever is prom queen in her school gets to have a scholarship. So she thinks that this is the way of still following her dream. So she's competing to become prom queen, and there is somebody competing against her, another girl, and she starts developing feelings for her. So like, it's going to be a female-female romance, and it just sounds like it's going to be so lovely and like uplifting and fun. And I think in a year like this, those are the kind of books that I should have been picking up, rather than reading some of like the darker fiction and some of the more serious things and feeling a bit kind of bogged down by it all. This is the kind of book that I wish I'd picked up this year. The next book that I really wish I'd read this year is one that's going to be featuring in a video coming out slightly later in the month, and that is Burn by Patrick Ness. So I'm going to be featuring this one in the Books I've Skipped This Year video, because this one has been on my TBR either 2 or 3 times, and for some reason I still haven't read it. I have a conflicting relationship with Patrick Ness. I read The Rest of Us Just Live Here. I loved it. It was brilliant. I was so excited to read more of his writing. And then I read The Ocean Was the Sky. The Ocean Was Our Sky, which is like a retelling of Moby Dick from the whale's perspective. And I loved the artwork throughout it, but the story I really could have done without. And I also read Release, and I hated every second of it. And that makes me scared about picking up more Patrick Ness. As far as I can understand, this one's like magical realism. It's set in America, so it's a historical fiction because it's set in America in like the 1950s, I think, but dragons are real, and they like hire a dragon to work on their land or something. I'm struggling to remember the details because it has been a while since I was meant to read this one, but I was kindly approved on NetGalley for this one by Walker Books, and I'm so ashamed of the fact that I didn't read it because it's Walker Books. Like, what bigger honour is there than working with Walker Books? Like, that's amazing. And I failed. I absolutely failed. Hopefully I will read it soon. I get so excited because I'm like, oh, Patrick Ness, I love The Rest of Us Just Live Here. And then I think about it, and then I remember how much I didn't like his other books, and then I get less excited, and then I just don't pick them up. But one day I will, hopefully, possibly, maybe. The next book I wish I'd read this year was Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is another one of those books that it sounds like it's going to be a really fun, light-hearted, uplifting story, and this is a adult romance as well. So like a chick-litty romance, not like an erotic romance. I don't really know enough about romance novels to talk about them eloquently, but this is about 2 authors, one of whom writes chick-lit and one of whom writes thrillers, I believe, and they're both on holiday trying to do like writing at like this retreat, and neither of them are having a good time because they're both experiencing serious writer's block, so they decided to like write each other's novels, so write in each other's genres. So I think it's about like being outside of your comfort zone, exploring new facets of your personality, and I'm assuming that they will eventually fall in love. And that is something that greatly interests me, and I would like to read it eventually. And the last book that I really wish I'd read in 2020 is Wonderland by Juno Dawson. So I pre-ordered this one, had it arrive as soon as it came out. I was so excited. It's like a retelling of Alice in Wonderland, but it's not like a straight retelling. It's like YA, kind of gritty contemporary. If you've read any Juno Dawson before, you'll know what she writes. So Meat Market was about the modelling industry and about like the Me Too movement. Clean was about a girl who was an addict and had to go to rehab. So it's going to be along those lines, but it is a lot shorter than most of Juno's recent novels. So most of Juno's earlier novels are around this size, but then her recent novels have been more like the 300 to 400 page count. This is 282 pages, and I think I'm slightly nervous about it for that reason, because it's so much shorter and I'm worried whether it's going to be rushed and not properly fleshed out. But also I didn't really love Meat Market all that much. Loved Clean. Clean was a 5-star straight up. Meat Market I had some issues with. But I'm going to read Wonderland anyway, because I love Juno Dawson and her writing is brilliant, and I think her portrayal of teens is so realistic, especially the UKYA aspects of it. So if that's a genre, like a publishing area that you don't read a lot of, Juno Dawson is one of the best places to start. She also recently won the YA Book Prize, so that's really cool. And I've got a feeling that Wonderland's probably going to be shortlisted for next year, and I always make it my thing to I do YA Book Prize predictions. I read the whole shortlist, I choose my own winner. I'm a huge supporter of the YA Book Prize. I always have been and I always will be, and if this one is shortlisted, then I'm going to be reading it before May at the very latest, but I'm hoping to get it done before then, just so that I've got it ticked off. But also such short chapters, I should be able to read this in a day. Why do I keep putting it off? Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Those are the 10 books that I really should have read this year. If you have read any of them and you would recommend starting somewhere, please just let me know down in the comments, because I'd love to have an idea of which one I should be picking up first, whether there are any that are kind of skippable and I'm just excited for no reason. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you'd like to subscribe, then I'd be super duper grateful. And please come back tomorrow for another Bookmas video. Bye!